16 a.m. At the Goldgate warehouse, all new hires avoided the notorious, trash-filled shift, Sector D. It was a place where careers and hope went to die. Ethan Cole, a 34-year-old single father, stood at the end of the line, arriving late. He was visibly exhausted, but his gaze held a quiet, fierce desperation. The grizzled supervisor tossed him a rusty badge with a sneer. "Nobody wants this shift, Cole. If you last 1 week, I'll personally buy you coffee." Ethan accepted the badge in silence. For him, failure was not an option he could afford. He had no idea that this absolute worst possible job would unexpectedly open the door to his new life. Ethan Cole, 34, was lean and dark-skinned, possessing a quiet, coiled strength built from years of relentless manual labor and minimal sleep. He carried the deep exhaustion of a man who constantly worries about his child's future. He was solely responsible for raising his 6-year-old daughter, Maya, who suffered from mild asthma. The accumulating costs of her preventative medicine, coupled with the necessity of a better private school for her educational future, were a constant crushing burden that weighed on every single decision he made. After 2 agonizing months of unemployment, following the sudden closure of his independent auto repair garage, Ethan was desperate enough to accept any role. He'd already burned through his small savings buffer, leaving him terrified of the approaching end of the month. The night before he accepted the job, he had skipped his own prescription refill, a mild pain reliever for an old shoulder injury, to ensure he had enough cash for Maya's next dose. He had done extensive research on the company, despite the low pay, and knew everyone whispered about Sector D, the pit of hell. He saw it not as a job, but as a temporary lifeline. On his first day, the only things he carried were his worn lunch bag, containing only cold rice, and a small, cherished creased drawing tucked into his pocket. A crayon picture from Maya that read, "Daddy is the strongest. I love you." The warehouse floor was overseen by the manager, Brent, a man known for his deep insecurity, his ingrained rudeness, and for systematically humiliating new workers until they either quit or broke under the pressure. When Brent tossed the rusty badge at him, all the veteran workers watched with cruel amusement, judging Ethan as a naive fool for willingly taking on the impossible task that guaranteed public failure. Ethan met their collective judgment with his characteristic quiet politeness, his words simple but firm, spoken with unwavering commitment. "A job is a job, sir. I'm ready to work, and I intend to do it correctly." He completely ignored the dismissive comments from his new peers who instantly labeled him the desperate guy and the 1-week wonder. He didn't have the luxury of pride, only determination. Sector D was indeed far worse than the rumors described. A pervasive, stomach-turning smell of mildew, the slick, slimy residue of decay, stagnant water leaking from cracked pipes, mountains of haphazardly tossed garbage, and the continuous unnerving scampering of unseen rats. It was a true industrial wasteland, a monument to corporate neglect. This wasn't merely household refuse. It was a hazardous mix of discarded hydraulic fluids, corroded metal fragments from long-dead machines, and improperly labeled containers of caustic cleaning agents. The floor was a constant threat, and the air itself was thick with particulate matter, a dangerous environment for anyone, let alone someone with a child suffering from asthma. The workers before him hadn't quit because the job was hard. They quit because it was insulting to their safety and professionalism. But Ethan, the highly trained engineer, didn't see chaos. He saw a system operating incorrectly. He methodically utilized his analytical mind to find the underlying structural order buried within the junk pile. He started slowly, not with the trash, but by sealing the most critical leaking pipe using epoxy he carried from his old toolbox. He knew that controlling the moisture was the first step to stabilizing the structural integrity of the sector. He systematically stacked the collapsed shipping boxes, organized the misplaced inventory by category using handwritten labels, and utilized his old mechanic skills to address minor, nagging structural hazards and loose power conduits. He worked in absolute silence, never once taking a break for food, simply focusing on the small, manageable task immediately in front of him, conserving his energy and never wavering from the plan he'd formulated in his mind. Every action Ethan took was weighted by the cost of reality. He mentally benchmarked his efforts. One stack of organized inventory equaled a day's dose of Maya's specific, expensive allergy medication. Clearing 3 sections meant he could afford the high-quality HEPA filter she desperately needed for her bedroom. This relentless personal accounting system transformed the mundane, miserable work into a profound, life-saving mission. It was this singular focus, not corporate ambition, that made him impervious to the grime in the supervisor's insults. By the end of his grueling first shift, the concrete floor of Sector D, which had been untouchable and unusable for months, was not just cleared, but shockingly clean, functional, and organized according to proper logistics principles. He didn't stop at cleaning. Before the end of the second day, he noticed a critical weakness in an overloaded racking system near the center of the pit. Using salvaged heavy-duty shims and bolts he had carried from his old truck, he spent his only break time shoring up the failing shelf, preventing a catastrophic, multi-ton collapse that nobody else had even recognized as a risk. His commitment was structural, not superficial. An older, grizzled veteran worker, known only as Frank, a man who had seen dozens of newcomers fail, approached him cautiously, his voice low with genuine, awestruck admiration. "I've been here 15 years, kid. No manager, no team, nobody ever got that section cleaned up. You've got genuine grit and something more." Ethan managed a rare, tired smile, his eyes reflecting a deep gratitude for the unexpected validation. "I just try to finish what I start, sir. And frankly, I need the work to last." Frank gestured toward the newly organized shelves. "This isn't just finishing, Cole. This is craftsmanship." Frank clapped Ethan firmly on the shoulder, a gesture of unexpected brotherhood, leaving a worn, clean rag in his palm. "Keep this. You'll need it, and you deserve a better start than that garbage patch, Cole. Don't let them break you." After just one relentless week, Sector D had undergone a total metamorphosis. It was no longer an abandoned wasteland, but the most organized, functional, and surprisingly efficient area of the entire Goldgate warehouse, a stark contrast to the rest of the facility. The workers who had initially laughed at Ethan now watched him with quiet, almost grudging curiosity. They kept a critical, silent distance, unwilling to admit their initial, cruel judgment had been completely and devastatingly wrong. Ethan's dedication was unwavering. One afternoon during his short lunch break, Ethan sat alone on an empty crate, carefully unwrapping his meager, cold portion of plain rice and salt. He called Maya, his voice immediately softening and becoming light, cheerful, and impossibly energetic. "Daddy's doing great, sweetie. I promise we'll bake those peanut butter cookies when I get home tonight. Remember, you're the head baker." None of his cynical colleagues knew he had been subsisting on plain rice and salt all week, meticulously hoarding every spare dollar from his paycheck for Maya's expensive, crucial preventative asthma prescription, the cost of which was non-negotiable. Manager Brent noticed Ethan's escalating effectiveness and the clear signs of his superior professional competence. The success of Sector D directly exposed Brent's long-term negligence, threatening his position, and he began to feel increasingly paranoid and insecure. Before the forklift incident, Brent initiated a petty, frustrating campaign. He began systematically hiding Ethan's spare parts and blocking his digital work orders, forcing Ethan to spend valuable time tracking down basic supplies and proving his competence to the front office. Brent decided he needed to eliminate Ethan discreetly. He engineered a subtle but malicious setup. He assigned Ethan the oldest, most notoriously broken forklift, Unit 19, in the entire fleet, a machine known for having a fatal electrical short. Brent's hope was simple. Ethan would either refuse the task or damage the useless machine beyond repair, giving Brent a clear, documented reason to fire him for gross negligence. But Ethan, the former chief maintenance engineer, calmly assessed the useless machine. He immediately diagnosed the short in the main electrical relay, which was typically a multi-hour expensive job. He repaired the critical electrical relay, Using nothing more than a discarded paperclip, a small piece of insulation wire he stripped from a scrap line, and a roll of electrical tape, completing the task in less than 20 minutes, leaving the entire veteran maintenance crew speechless and impressed. The unbelievable rumors of his quiet competence and his almost magical ability to fix things escalated rapidly, finally reaching the corporate offices upstairs where they were usually ignored. CEO Amelia Hart, a sharp, results-oriented 32-year-old executive known for her ruthless efficiency, rarely descended to the warehouse floor. However, she overheard the urgent whispers circulating among the mid-level staff. Sector D is operational and running at 110%. It's all thanks to the new guy, Cole. Then a truly vicious, unprecedented thunderstorm struck the city one afternoon. The aging warehouse roof began to leak catastrophically in a major section adjacent to Sector D, a torrent of water pouring directly onto a multi-million-dollar shipment of high-value imported electronics destined for overseas clients. Brent completely panicked, his fear overriding his professionalism. He shouted useless, contradictory orders and froze completely in the face of the impending financial disaster that could cost the company a quarter's profits. Ethan, recognizing the sheer urgency and the danger to the inventory, immediately disregarded Brent's panicked shouting and scaled the precarious 30-foot high steel shelving structure, ignoring the rising water below and the dangerous lighting. He used his quick-thinking repair skills to fashion a temporary, makeshift pressure patch, scrap rubber, old roofing screws, and a broken clamp from the junk pile he'd organized. He successfully diverted the deluge into an empty bin, saving the entire shipment from irreparable water damage. When Brent finally recovered his composure and reported the incident upstairs, he shamelessly took all the credit, painting himself as the quick-thinking, heroic leader who directed the repair. Amelia, already deeply suspicious of Brent's pattern of exaggerating his own success and covering up failures, came down immediately to inspect the scale of the damage and the quality of the temporary repair. She reviewed the internal security footage from a nearby pillar camera in the security office, which showed the entire single-handed, selfless, and extremely dangerous rescue operation performed entirely by Ethan, while Brent stood soaking wet and helplessly below. Her face hardened, betraying her cold corporate fury as she watched the unadulterated truth of Ethan's integrity and Brent's cowardice unfold. The new worker performed this repair, Mr. Brent, not you. The footage is conclusive, and you were clearly not in control of the situation. Brent stammered uncontrollably, his composure completely gone. I merely supervised the execution of the initial plan. I was directing traffic. Amelia cut him off sharply, her voice dangerously calm and authoritative, signaling the end of his career. Bring him to my office immediately, and I want a full written report detailing every task he has completed since he started. A nearby dock worker, Frank, quietly approached Amelia as she finished the video review, his voice low with genuine, heartfelt respect. Ma'am, if it wasn't for that man, Ethan Cole, we would have lost every penny of that shipment, and you'd be filing for insurance. He's the real deal. Twist 1. The CEO knows his secret past. Amelia summoned Ethan to the executive suite, a towering, minimalist, glass-walled environment miles away from his damp, subterranean Sector D. The contrast felt suffocating to him. Ethan was riddled with anxiety. He was certain this was the formal, inevitable firing he had managed to evade for weeks, maybe even a reprimand for acting without authority during the crisis. But Amelia didn't mention the leaky roof, or the fixed forklift, or Brent's reports. She stared past the fear in his eyes, cutting to the core of the issue. Why is a man with your advanced engineering skill, your clear technical knowledge, and a background in complex logistics accepting the absolute worst, lowest paid, and most undesirable job in my entire warehouse? Ethan was taken aback by her frankness and her clear knowledge of his underlying skill set. He stood silent for a long moment, the fear momentarily replaced by a strong internal need for honesty. My old firm collapsed, Ms. Hart. They called it bankruptcy, but it was worse. I am simply trying to rebuild my life, and I need a stable income to take care of my daughter's critical health and educational needs. Amelia had already launched a discreet, fully legal, and thorough investigation into his complete professional history, and what she found was far more profound and respectable than a simple bankruptcy story. She revealed the greater truth about his past to him. Ethan had once been a highly respected, award-winning chief engineer for a massive national logistics firm, but he had honorably and publicly resigned after courageously exposing systemic financial corruption and dangerous safety violations within the company's executive team. She detailed the fallout. He had subsequently been professionally blacklisted by every major competitor, his reputation systematically destroyed by a vicious, well-funded PR campaign, and he was refused employment by every major corporation in the region because of his principled stand. They all viewed him as a liability. Amelia slowly leaned back in her chair, her gaze fixed on him with a mixture of respect, intellectual curiosity, and profound astonishment. The rest of the industry sees a failed engineer, Mr. Cole. They see a risk, a whistleblower, a troublemaker. But I, quite simply, see a man of absolute, uncompromising principles who put his ethics above his entire career and his financial security. Ethan stood completely still, his entire body overwhelmed, utterly unaccustomed to being treated with such profound fairness, recognition, and validation after years of silent isolation. The acknowledgement felt like a physical release of tension. Twist 2, Brent's public smear campaign. Backfire's manager, Brent, consumed by professional jealousy, fear, and a crippling sense of inadequacy due to Amelia's personal intervention, learned the CEO was taking a deep, personal interest in Ethan. Desperate to save his own skin, he immediately initiated a vicious public smear campaign on the warehouse floor, spreading malicious, fabricated lies that Ethan was deliberately sabotaging the inventory and threatening to destabilize the company to demand an exorbitant, illegal salary increase. The toxic rumors spread quickly among the less observant workers, fueled by Brent's bitterness and their own pre-existing skepticism toward outsiders. One tense afternoon, while Ethan was quietly servicing the main hydraulic pump system in his sector, Brent gathered the maximum number of shift workers around him, pointing directly and accusingly at Ethan, his voice loud and venomous. "He's just playing the hero. He's dangerous, he's a liability, he's a blacklisted fool, and he's secretly trying to hold this company hostage for money." Ethan froze completely, the sound of the accusation echoing in the huge space. The humiliation of being publicly shamed and smeared, cutting deeply through his professional composure and his pride. Just as the crowd's murmuring turned into an angry, unified consensus against him, preparing to shun him, Amelia Hart walked directly and purposefully into the very center of the hostile crowd, her executive presence commanding immediate, total, shocked silence that hushed the warehouse floor. She held up her executive tablet, projecting the security footage onto a nearby digital sign, not just the moment of the roof rescue, but the crystal-clear audio recording of Brent's panic, his abandonment of duty, and his outright self-serving lies during the crisis. The entire warehouse floor fell into absolute, heavy, and profound silence, the sound of Brent's desperate, panicked voice betraying him completely as the truth was revealed. Amelia then looked past Brent, fixing her stare on the entire group of cynical workers with powerful, unyielding clarity. "Mr. Brent has lied to all of you, not just to me, but the man you are currently looking down on and mocking. He not only saved this company from bankruptcy and potentially saved all of your jobs, but he did it with a paperclip and a piece of scrap wire." She then turned directly to Ethan, her face radiating firm trust and professional acknowledgement, and delivered her immediate, stunning professional decree. "Effective immediately, Ethan Cole, you are promoted to the head of maintenance and logistics for this entire Goldgate facility. I want you to manage your own budget, hire your own team, and teach every single person here how to approach their job with your standard of integrity." Ethan felt a profound, overwhelming surge of emotion. The years of silent struggle, the blacklisting, the humiliation, all finally dissolving in a wave of recognition. "Ms. Hart, why are you choosing to trust me so completely when no one else would?" Amelia offered a small, knowing, respectful smile, recognizing a kindred spirit of efficiency and honesty. Because a truly principled man doesn't need words or fancy titles to explain himself, Mr. Cole. The quality of your work and the depth of your integrity spoke volumes, even when you chose to remain completely silent. The workers, now deeply ashamed of their cynicism and cruelty, erupted in loud, genuine, sustained applause, the first true public recognition Ethan had ever received in his career. They saw not a fool but a hero. Manager Brent was subsequently and formally demoted and permanently transferred to a distant, quiet, and completely inconsequential satellite facility, his power and influence instantly neutralized. Ethan formally and immediately took over the leadership of the maintenance and logistics team, transforming his forgotten corner of the warehouse into a bustling, respected center of operational excellence and training. He didn't just issue orders or delegate tasks, he educated them, meticulously teaching his team to understand the complex systems they managed, not just follow rudimentary commands blindly, fostering a culture of true engineering mastery. He completely changed the functional culture of the former Sector D. It quickly went from a dreaded, abandoned corner to the area where every worker, from every shift, wanted to train and learn proper mechanics and problem solving. One afternoon, Ethan organized a critical training session on predictive maintenance. He taught them to spot flaws before they became crises, mirroring his own approach. One busy afternoon, Maya had an unexpected school closure due to a burst pipe, and Ethan had to bring her into the relative quiet of his spacious, new maintenance office, which had a small, neat drawing area for her. Amelia spotted the young girl during an unannounced inspection. She walked over, immediately dissolving the invisible CEO worker barrier by kneeling down instantly to Maya's eye level. "You must be Maya. Your daddy tells me you love to draw very much. He says you are his best helper." Maya beamed, immediately comfortable with the powerful woman, proudly holding up a drawing of a stick figure man wearing a bright yellow hard hat and a superhero cape. "Daddy is my hero, and now he fixes everything for the whole company," she announced to the CEO. Ethan flushed deeply, profoundly touched by his daughter's simple, honest declaration, his eyes welling up with pride, while Amelia offered a rare, genuinely tender smile, seeing the depth of their relationship. That evening, Amelia extended a formal dinner invitation to Ethan and Maya as a personal thank you for his loyalty, his integrity, and for bringing a new standard of humanity into her often cold corporation. Ethan felt initially awkward and out of place in the expensive, luxurious downtown restaurant, worried about using the wrong fork or saying the wrong thing. But Maya's infectious laughter, her honest curiosity, and her simple charm quickly relaxed the entire atmosphere, transforming the tense business meal into a genuinely joyful, informal dinner party. Under the soft, golden light of the dining room, Amelia opened up to him, offering a personal moment of professional and personal honesty that she rarely shared with anyone. "I've never encountered anyone quite like you, Ethan. You are consistently honest, incredibly patient, and you live entirely for the well-being of your daughter. You remind me that what truly matters isn't the bottom line, but the people who make it possible." Ethan looked down at his daughter's head, stroking her hair, his answer simple, heartfelt, and profound. "I'm just trying to be the kind of man my daughter will always be proud of, Miss Hart. That is my only mission." Amelia fell silent, a look of deep contemplation in her eyes. She understood that she had finally found the one thing her world of cold corporate success and ruthless ambition truly lacked: a truly good, highly principled person she could genuinely trust. Call to action. If you believe the strength of quiet integrity can change an entire community, comment. A month later, Goldgate Corporation held its annual full-staff corporate meeting, a massive gathering Ethan would never have been allowed to attend just weeks prior, now sitting in the front row with his new management team. The atmosphere was electric with renewed corporate optimism, a feeling directly tied to the operational efficiencies Ethan had implemented across the warehouse. Amelia stood on the main stage delivering her keynote address. She paused her formal report and proudly announced that Sector D and the entire maintenance infrastructure had been fully restored to peak record functionality, and that the entire sweeping credit belonged to Ethan Cole. The entire auditorium, from the junior clerks to the senior executives, rose in a powerful, thunderous, and emotional standing ovation for the man who had started as the desperate guy working the worst shift. Ethan looked down at the front row, his eyes suddenly catching Maya. She was holding up the same hand-drawn sign, her small face radiating unbridled pride. "Daddy, I'm proud of you. You did it." The moment felt complete, a full circle of vindication for every sacrifice he had made over the last few years. After the meeting concluded and the crowd began to disperse, Amelia stepped out onto the executive rooftop balcony, the gentle evening breeze cooling the lingering excitement and energy. Ethan quietly joined her moments later, the silence between them now comfortable and mutually respectful, rather than awkward. She spoke softly, leaning on the railing, her voice reflective and deeply personal, devoid of the corporate CEO cadence. "You know, Ethan, my decision to ignore my manager's toxic report and come down to the warehouse floor that day ended up being the best decision of my life too. You restored more than just the warehouse. You restored my belief in finding good people." Ethan looked at her, his eyes reflecting genuine professional warmth and the budding promise of a deeper, foundational personal partnership that transcended their job titles. "Thank you, Amelia. For the first time in years, I feel like I'm standing on solid ground again, and Maya sees it too." "Socket." Maya suddenly ran out onto the balcony, finding them instantly and grasping both their hands instinctively, looking up at Amelia with childish, innocent urgency. "Ms. Amelia, are you going to have dinner with us again soon? We're going to bake those peanut butter cookies." Amelia knelt down instantly, resting her hand gently on the girl's head, her professional mask finally melting away to reveal genuine affection. "If your dad says yes, Maya, I would like that very much. Consider it a standing, weekly appointment." Ethan smiled, finally feeling completely secure, completely recognized and profoundly happy, his future cemented by integrity and love. "I say yes. Every time." Ethan closed his eyes for a brief moment, remembering the frigid morning fog, the rusted badge, and the desperation. He realized the best decision wasn't getting the promotion, but making the choice to work with honor, even when society and a petty boss had tried to grind him down to nothing. Ethan later framed his original, faded, rusted Sector D name badge in their small apartment, hanging it proudly above a newer photo of him and Maya, a permanent, cherished reminder that sometimes the absolute worst job, the hardest path, is the door that unlocks the best, most beautiful life. Final call to action. Chip healing stories. Standard. If you believe stories of silent dedication and hidden integrity deserve to be told, leave a comment and subscribe. We tell the stories that shouldn't be forgotten. Real people are creating and telling stories, not mass-produced AI.